Hey guys, it's Technology Freak. So I was just going to talk about Braille Access, something that I've talked about before and I've done 3 tutorials on. So just to give a bit of an introduction for those that are not subscribed to this channel and somehow come across it. It's essentially Apple's take on a note taker that's built into iOS, iPadOS, macOS, and visionOS. So that would include every iPhone that can run iOS 26, every Mac that can run macOS Tahoe, every iPad that can run iPadOS 26, and every, well, there's only 2 Apple Vision Pro headsets, but any Vision OS device that is Vision OS 26. Nothing for the Apple TV, although I wish that would be a thing, because live captions would be pretty cool on the Apple TV. Maybe one day it'll get to that. Who knows? So the cheapest setup you can get with Braille Access is if you, now this is for those that are blind and visually impaired, and those that are deafblind as well. You could get a Orbit Reader 20 or 20 Plus. Get yourself either a used iPhone, preferably a 15 Pro Max or above, or just get the brand new iPhone 17e, and that should bring the cost up to $1,500. $1,500. That's really cheap for a note taker. As I said in my tutorials, the Braille Access platform bridges the gap between a connected iPhone, Mac, iPad, or Vision Pro and a Braille display to make an actual note-taking solution. Gone are the days when you need a specific note taker. Now, in certain situations, that is an exception, because if you go to school or college, if you're a blind person, usually you would either take a computer or a note taker. Some people say, oh, get a computer and a Braille display and you'll be fine. That may be true, because generally what you would really need if you're deafblind is a Braille display that can output the text on the computer screen in Braille. Though if you're able to hear and able to read Braille, it's also, excuse me, it's also there's also a benefit. Now, what if there was a piece of software that bridged the gap between a Windows computer and a Braille display? That would be kind of cool. Then that way you wouldn't really need something like the Braille Note Evolve. But this is why these companies like HumanWare exist. HumanWare has made Braille note takers since the Braille Note Classic in 2000. And back then it was, I think it was Pulse Data International. I don't know. It was something. And then HumanWare started making them, though the original, like the first ever note taker, if you want me to be honest, It's the Versa Braille that was released in the late 70s, about 1978 or 1979. From what I have read online recently, I don't think it required batteries. It wasn't, I don't think it was battery operated. But it relied on tapes, like I believe cassette tapes, that you would be able to do 3 different things. One, you'd
New
be able,
notification from power unknown unavailable.
excuse me,
Chris's server.
it was my computer.
Speech mode off.
But anyway, let me get back to the topic before I was rudely interrupted. Thanks, NVDA. No, it's not your fault. The computer's battery does die. So you can do one of 3 things. You can write documents, you can view documents, or you can record media and even playback recordings, I think. But that was about it. That's all you could do. And it was the only note taker of its kind until the mid to late 2000s that can record. Now, from what I can understand, it required an actual cassette recorder to implement the recording function. From what I can understand. If I'm wrong, you guys can let me know. But for sure, the tapes were used for data. It did not have any kind of flash storage at all. That note taker happened to come out in 1987. The Braille and Speak from Blaze Engineering, now known as Blaze Technologies. So Blaze Engineering made a note taker that could store up to, I believe, 200 pages of Braille in flash memory. It had, I believe it had 200, I think it's, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, 200 kilobytes of flash memory. So yeah, that was tiny. And if you want to go further, one of the first battery-powered note takers with a Braille display happened to be the Braille Lite. Like, with a one-line Braille display of like 18, 20, or 40 cells. The original Braille Lite 40, I believe, had 4 megabytes of memory. And that was tiny even for that time. Though something I really thought was kind of amazing that I discovered recently. I was on a Team Talk server with somebody who had a newer edition of a Braille Lite Millennium that had 12 megabytes of memory. Now I'm pretty sure it was I think it was either 2 megabytes or 12 megabytes. But I think it was 2 megabytes. I'm not sure. Maybe 2 megabytes of RAM and 12 megabytes of flash memory. But either way, it was really bad. And that was in the 2000s. The Braille Note Classic had 16 megabytes of memory. The Braille Note PK, I believe, had the same amount. The Braille Note Empower had 120, or 128 megabytes of flash memory, or 128 megabytes of storage, and you can record on that thing. That's what I meant by that recording feature did not actually take effect. I mean, it wasn't prominent in note takers until about 2005, or around that time. The Braille Note Apex, which was the one that I kind of liked, jumped up to 8 gigabytes of storage. That was a whole lot better than 128 megabytes, in my opinion. Though, when I had the Empower, I did not care about storage. I just used it. The Apex was when I really started exploring the file manager and stuff like that. HIMS, now known as Elvis BLV, has done a lot better of a job with storage on their note takers. The original Braille Sense, from what I have discovered while watching a YouTube video about it, it had 64 megabytes. Now that was much better, but that was released in 2006, about 20 years ago. Some newer versions of the Braille Sense, I'll give an example here. The Braille Sense U2. That came out in 2012. That had 32 gigabytes of storage. Much better than the Apex's 8 gigabytes of storage. Now when it comes to the Android side of things, the Braille Note Touch had 16 gigabytes. The Touch Plus had 64. And HIMS had, I believe, it had 64 gigabytes on the Polaris, 128 gigabytes on the Braille Sense 6, and now 256 gigabytes on the upcoming, or I assume, the upcoming Braille Sense 7. And now, Humanware is blowing that out of the water because the Evolve, the Braille Note Evolve, has 32 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. Now that's because it's a Windows-based device. No, not Windows CE, like the Apex or the Empower, but actual Windows. I'd want to see myself how far I would be able to go with a device like that. Because I can navigate regular Windows just fine with a QWERTY keyboard. I know my way around it. But what about with a Braille keyboard? That would be kind of interesting. Anyway, I kind of figured I would just talk about that real quick. So, yeah, that's it for me. See you guys.